Welcome back to Sleepy Historian. Tonight we are going somewhere very small and very quiet. I'd like you to settle in first. Let your shoulders lower. Let your breathing slow just a little. There's nowhere else you need to be. If you enjoy these long, steady journeys into the past, you can gently like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and return whenever you need history told slowly enough to drift beside. Now, when most people imagine medieval childhood, they picture something simple. Children chasing chickens through village lanes, laughing beside stone cottages, perhaps barefoot, perhaps dirty, but free. But that is not quite right. The truth is quieter than that. In the Middle Ages, childhood was not a protected season of life. It was not a carefully fenced garden before adulthood began. It was the beginning of endurance. You were not raised toward comfort. You were raised toward usefulness. And that shift, that subtle difference, changes everything. Tonight you will slowly come to understand how early responsibility arrived, how survival shaped affection, how play rehearsed labor, and how, in many places, childhood dissolved without announcement. There were no birthday parties marking a passage into a carefree age. There was cold, there was work, there was waiting, and there was love. But it was careful, very careful, because not every child lived long enough to grow tall. Some did not wake again after winter fevers. Some did not survive their first year. Morning did not come for everyone, and when survival is uncertain, tenderness learns restraint. But we will move slowly. There is no rush here. Imagine now that you are standing outside a small timber house in the late 1300s. It is dusk. Smoke threads upward from a low chimney. The air smells faintly of damp earth and wood ash. Somewhere beyond the fields, a bell is ringing the evening hour. Inside that house is a child. Perhaps that child is you. You are small, not in the sentimental sense, but physically small, wrapped tightly in linen bands, swaddled, contained. The world beyond your mother's arms is drafty and loud and uncertain. Infancy in the medieval world was not assumed to be permanent. It was conditional. From the moment of birth there was urgency. Urgency to baptize. Urgency to name. Urgency to protect against what could not be seen. Illness moved quietly in those centuries. Invisible, patient, persistent. No one understood it fully. It simply arrived, and so affection, though real, was sometimes held at arm's length, not from cruelty, but from fear. Parents had learned over generations that attachment could be followed by absence. You might imagine that medieval parents did not love their children, but that too would be wrong. Love existed. It simply moved differently. It was practical. It was expressed in feeding, in warming, in teaching. It was rarely spoken in grand language. It was shown by survival effort. As you grow older, 5, perhaps 6, something subtle happens. You are no longer an uncertain infant. You are becoming useful. There is no ceremony, no speech announcing it. But one morning, someone hands you something to carry, a bundle of sticks, a small bucket, a sibling to watch, and you carry it. Your fingers are cold around the handle. The bucket is heavier than you expected. The ground is uneven. Your shoes, if you have them, are stiff. But this is not punishment. This is preparation. In the medieval world, survival was not an event. It was a condition, like weather, like gravity. Children entered that condition early. You do not wait until adolescence to learn endurance. You learn it in fragments, standing in fields while adults harvest, watching animals that do not particularly respect your authority, listening carefully for instructions that are rarely repeated. There are moments of laughter. Of course there are. Children are children in any century. But play often mirrors labor. A stick becomes a plow. A stone becomes a tool. A game becomes rehearsal. You learn by imitation. You learn by watching hands, your father's hands splitting wood, your mother's hands kneading dough, your master's hands guiding tools. Hands are important in this world. Small hands become capable hands quickly, and time moves slowly. There are long winters, long evenings near hearths, long afternoons of waiting for something to finish growing. Childhood in this world is not separate from the adult sphere. It is adjacent to it, leaning toward it. And as you listen tonight, drifting in and out, you will begin to notice something else. There was no universal medieval childhood. A peasant child and a noble child lived very different days. A town apprentice and a shepherd boy learned different lessons. But beneath those differences was a shared reality, uncertainty, not dramatic danger, not constant crisis, just the steady awareness that food must be grown, that winter will return, that illness visits without invitation, that work does not pause because you are small. And yet, there were stories told beside fires. There were carved toys, there were lullabies, there was gentleness, but it was woven into responsibility. Tonight we will walk slowly through those layers. We will begin at birth, where survival is most fragile. Then we will move into work, the small tasks given to smaller bodies. We will sit in fields that stretch long under summer heat. We will step inside workshops where apprentices learn obedience before mastery. We will consider discipline, not as cruelty, but as preparation. We will pause beside empty beds when illness comes quietly in the night. And eventually we will watch childhood dissolve, not in celebration, not in ceremony, but in gradual merging with adulthood. By the end, you may notice something unexpected. Medieval childhood was not necessarily harsher in feeling. It was simply closer to necessity, and necessity is quiet. Now, let your breathing slow again. Imagine the low glow of firelight against stone walls, the faint sound of wind pressing against shutters, the soft weight of wool blankets. You are very small. The world is very large. And tomorrow, even if you are only 6 years old, you will carry something. But for now, you are still. And we will begin. You arrive in the dark, not metaphorically, not poetically, quite literally. Most medieval births happen at night, or in the dim half-light of a shuttered room. Windows are small, candles are expensive, firelight does most of the work. The air is thick with smoke and breath. You are born into a space already crowded: midwife, mother, perhaps a neighbor woman, perhaps a grandmother. Men are often outside the room, waiting, not idle, but separate. The world you enter is not quiet. It is strained, focused. Birth in the medieval world is not assumed to end safely, and so before you even open your eyes there is urgency around you. If you are weak, if your cry is thin, if your breathing falters, water may be fetched quickly. A whispered baptism might be performed before a priest can even be summoned. Not because your parents expect you to die, but because they know that some do. This is the first truth of medieval childhood. Survival is never guaranteed. You are wrapped tightly, long strips of linen wound around your body, binding your arms to your sides. Swaddling is believed to help your limbs grow straight. It keeps you warm. It keeps you contained. You cannot move much. Your world is warmth, fabric, the rhythmic sound of breathing near you. Outside the house, life continues. Animals must still be fed. Fires must still be tended. Bread must still be baked. But inside, for a few days you are the center of attention. And yet, even in these first days, affection is layered with watchfulness. Your mother studies your breathing, watches the rise and fall of your chest, counts the hours between cries, listens in the night. Sleep is shallow in a medieval household with a newborn, not because of indulgence, but because of fear. Illness does not announce itself clearly. A slight warmth in your skin, a refusal to feed, a cry that sounds different than yesterday. There are no thermometers, no antibiotics, no clear explanations, only observation. You are baptized quickly, often within days. Your name is spoken publicly, recorded perhaps in a parish book if the village keeps one. Your identity is established early, not ceremonially. protectively, because to be unnamed in this world is to be vulnerable in more ways than one. The first winter of your life is a quiet trial. Cold seeps through timber walls. Smoke lingers low. Drafts slip beneath doors. If you are born in late autumn, your earliest months are marked by dim light and long nights. You do not remember this, of course, but your body does. It learns cold before it learns language. Milk may be scarce if harvests were poor. Your mother's health matters deeply, more than anyone says aloud. If she is weak, you are weaker. If she survives childbirth poorly, your chances narrow. And sometimes morning does not come for one of you. This is not spoken loudly. It is absorbed. If you survive your first year, something shifts. You are no longer entirely fragile. You sit upright. You grasp at objects. You crawl across packed earth floors. The house feels larger now. The hearth glows brighter at your height. You taste small bits of bread softened in broth. Perhaps mashed vegetables. Perhaps thin porridge. Food is simple. Consistency matters more than flavor. You learn texture before you learn meaning. The people around you are careful but not indulgent. They cannot afford constant focus. Fields call. Workshops demand. Animals require tending. And so you are placed in a cradle, or on a blanket near the hearth, or carried on a hip while tasks are completed. Your childhood begins not in isolation from work, but beside it. You grow accustomed to rhythm, the thud of kneading dough, the scrape of wood being shaved smooth, the low murmur of adult conversation. You do not yet understand words, but you understand tone. And tone in a medieval household is often steady, not overly playful, not overly expressive. Emotion is present, but it is moderated, because survival requires balance. If another child in the village falls ill, your parents hear about it. News travels quickly in small communities. A fever, a cough that would not ease, a child who did not wake. The knowledge settles quietly into the household. There is no dramatic reaction, just a tightening, a watchfulness renewed. You are checked more often in the night. Your breathing is listened to. Your forehead touched, not obsessively, but deliberately. And as months turn into years, you begin to toddle. Your legs are unsteady, your balance uncertain, but you move. Movement is progress. Movement is hope. You follow older siblings if you have them. You reach for tools you cannot lift. You mimic gestures. Already, imitation is your education. No one announces that you are learning. You simply are. If you fall, you are picked up. If you cry, you are soothed, but briefly, because crying is common, and work does not pause long. You begin to understand boundaries. The hearth is hot. The animals kick. The road beyond the house leads farther than you are allowed. Restrictions are practical. The world is not padded. It is edged. But you are not unloved. You are watched in small, constant ways. A crust saved for you. A blanket adjusted. A hand steadying yours as you attempt your first careful steps. Affection in this world is expressed through maintenance, through keeping you alive. And perhaps this is the quietest truth of all. In the medieval world, to raise a child past infancy is an achievement, not celebrated loudly, but deeply felt. Each month you remain is a quiet victory. Each winter survived is a milestone unspoken. By the time you are 5, if you reach it, something fundamental has changed. You are no longer simply a life to be protected. You are becoming a body that can contribute, and that shift begins gently, almost invisibly. But it begins. For now, though, you are still small, still watched in the night, still wrapped against cold that presses at the walls. The fire lowers to embers. The house settles. Breathing fills the dark. And you, uncertain but present, continue. By the time you are 5, perhaps 6, something subtle is shifted. No one announces it. There is no gathering, no blessing, no speech declaring that childhood is ending. It simply narrows. You wake one morning in the same house, beneath the same roof beams darkened by years of smoke. The fire has burned low. The air is cool against your face, but today, instead of being watched, you are handed something, a small bundle of kindling, a wooden spoon, a scrap of cloth to wipe the table. The object is light, lighter than the tools adults carry, but it is not symbolic, it is real. And when you take it, something changes. You are no longer merely being kept alive, you are expected to help keep others alive. The tasks are small at first. You carry water from the edge of the yard, not from the distant well. You gather eggs from hens that already know you. You watch a younger sibling for a few minutes while your mother steps outside. The work is not dramatic, but it is consistent. And consistency is what shapes you. Your hands grow accustomed to rough textures, splintered wood, coarse wool, cold metal handles. Your bare feet, if you go without shoes in warmer months, toughen against packed earth and scattered stones. You do not complain much, not because you are unusually obedient, but because everyone around you is working too. There is no alternative model. When you grow tired, you sit briefly on a low stool near the hearth. The warmth touches your face. You rest your hands in your lap, and then someone calls your name. Not sharply, simply because there is more to be done. In a medieval household, idleness is rare. Not forbidden, just impractical. Morning begins early. Before the sun lifts fully above the horizon, you are awake. The room is dim. The air smells faintly of ash and damp wool. You rub your eyes with the back of your hand. You pull on the same tunic you wore yesterday. It has been mended once already. The fabric is stiff in places where it dried too quickly near the fire. Outside, frost may cling to the ground. If it is winter, your breath appears in front of you, pale and brief. You are sent to fetch water. The bucket is smaller than the one adults use, but it is not empty of weight. You feel the strain in your fingers as you carry it carefully, trying not to spill. Sometimes you spill anyway. No one shouts, but someone notices. You try harder the next day. Learning here is rarely explained in words. It is learned by repetition. You sweep the same floor each morning. You feed the same animals each afternoon. You fold the same cloth each evening. The rhythm becomes familiar, and familiarity becomes expectation. By 7, perhaps even earlier in some households, you are trusted with slightly larger tasks. You might accompany an older sibling to the edge of a field, not to harvest, your arms are still too short, but to gather what has fallen. Loose stalks, missed grains, twigs for fuel. You walk behind adults whose steps are longer than yours. You hurry to keep up. The sun moves slowly across the sky. Work does not end when you feel finished. It ends when the task is complete. And this is one of the earliest lessons you absorb. Your feelings do not determine the schedule. Weather does, seasons do, animals do. In summer, the heat presses against your shoulders. Your neck grows warm beneath the collar of your tunic. Dust clings to your skin. In winter, your fingers ache with cold. You tuck them beneath your arms between tasks. The wind slips through the smallest openings in walls and clothing alike. You begin to understand your body in practical terms. How long you can carry something before your arms tremble. How far you can walk before your legs slow. How quickly you recover when given a moment of rest. Childhood in this world is physical, not structured by lessons on parchment, at least not for most children, but by tasks measured in weight and distance. You are praised occasionally. A nod, a brief smile, a simple good, not because your efforts are small, but because praise, like everything else, is measured. Too much softness might weaken you. At least, that is what many adults believe. You are not treated harshly without reason, but you are treated realistically. If you fail to close a gate and an animal wanders, there are consequences, not theatrical, but practical. Someone must retrieve it. Time is lost. Energy is spent. And so you are reminded. Next time, close it firmly. Responsibility is introduced gradually, not as burden, as expectation. Even your posture begins to change. You stand straighter when spoken to. You answer clearly. You listen without interrupting, because listening is survival. In some households you may be sent beyond your home entirely. At 7 or 8 some children enter service, apprenticeship, domestic roles in larger homes. But for now you remain close to your family, close to the hearth, close to the fields, close to the same narrow path you walk each day. The path becomes familiar beneath your feet. The bend in the road, the stone that juts slightly higher than the others, the fence that leans. Your world is small in geography, but large in responsibility. And something else begins to happen quietly. You start to notice when adults are tired. You see the way your father rubs his shoulder after splitting wood. You notice how your mother pauses slightly before lifting a heavy pot. You understand, without being told, that your small contributions matter. Not in grand ways, but in steady ones. This awareness matures you gently, not by stripping joy away, but by weaving you into necessity. There are still moments of play. You chase a chicken across the yard. You laugh when a goat nudges you unexpectedly. You carve a small shape into a scrap of wood, copying what you have seen. But even play imitates work. You pretend to cook. You mimic plowing with a stick. You assign chores to imaginary companions. Because work is what surrounds you, and what surrounds you shapes you. As dusk settles, you return indoors. The sky deepens into gray-blue. Smoke rises again from chimneys across the village. You sit near the fire, your legs are tired, your hands are slightly sore. No one marched this day as unusual, but it has been important. Because today, like yesterday, you practiced adulthood, not dramatically, but persistently. Childhood in the medieval world is not something that ends abruptly. It thins, it blends, it stretches toward expectation. And you, still small, still learning, carry what you are given. If you step outside now, into the narrow yard behind your home, you might think, at first glance, that this is where childhood finally appears. There are children here, several of them. Their voices rise and fall in uneven bursts. There is movement, dust kicked into the air, a brief laugh. It looks almost familiar to you, but stay a little longer, watch more carefully. The games are not separate from the world that surrounds them. They are shaped by it. You do not have shells of toys. There are no bright colors, no objects made solely for delight. Instead, there are fragments, a smooth stick, a carved scrap of wood, a small wheel fashioned by an older sibling from leftover material, a cloth doll stitched from worn fabric. If you are fortunate, someone has taken the time to carve a tiny horse for you. Its legs are uneven, its body rough beneath your thumb. You treasure it, but even this toy mirrors something real. Horses pull plows. Horses carry goods. Horses serve. Your games echo labor. You push the wooden horse across the dirt and pretend it is hauling grain. You drag a stick through the earth in straight lines, copying the motion of plowing you have watched since you could stand. You build small walls from loose stones, imitating the mending of fences. No one instructs you to do this. You simply replicate what fills your days. Play is rehearsal. You gather with other children in the village, but even that gathering is rarely aimless. If you chase one another, it is across ground you know well, paths worn by adults. If you throw stones, you throw them toward a mark on a tree, practicing aim without knowing why that skill may matter later. There are games of balance, walking carefully along a fallen log, standing on one foot longer than the others, testing who can carry a bundle the farthest without dropping it. These are contests, yes, but they are also preparation. You laugh when someone stumbles. You laugh when you stumble. Laughter exists here. It is not absent from the medieval world, but it is not sheltered from consequence. If you wander too far during play, someone calls you back. If you break something, even accidentally, the loss is felt. Resources are limited. Objects are not easily replaced, and so even joy moves within boundaries. In winter, play changes. The yard is stiff with frost. Your breath clouds the air in front of you. Fingers grow numb quickly. You stamp your feet to keep warm. You trace shapes in thin layers of snow. You dare one another to touch icy surfaces for longer than comfort allows. But eventually, the cold drives you inside. Indoors, space is tighter. Games become quieter. You sit near the hearth with siblings. Perhaps you play counting games using dried beans or small pebbles. Perhaps you listen to a story told for the 100th time. Stories are important. They carry warnings disguised as wonder. Tales of wolves in forests, of travelers who lost their way, of clever children who survived by wit rather than strength. You absorb these lessons without being told they are lessons. Because storytelling, like play, prepares you. You may wrestle lightly with other children, testing strength, pushing one another onto soft patches of straw. It looks rough, but it is measured. You are learning where your body ends and another begins. Learning balance, learning resilience. If you fall and scrape your knee, you brush it off. There is little ceremony around minor pain. No one panics. The world has sharper edges than this. And so you adapt. Summer evenings stretch longer. The sky holds its light. Adults linger outside finishing tasks. You gather nearby, not far from supervision, but not entirely under it either. You invent small challenges. Who can climb halfway up the low tree fastest? Who can carry 2 buckets, empty, for now, without spilling imaginary water? Who can run to the fence and back before the bell rings in the distance? Even your imagination draws from reality. You pretend to bake bread. You pretend to tend sheep. You pretend to be merchants, trading stones as though they were coins. In towns, children might play at being apprentices, mimicking the motions of cobblers or blacksmiths they observe daily. In noble households, children practice courtly gestures, bowing, speaking formally, imitating adult speech patterns. Everywhere, play bends toward adulthood. There is no protected fantasy realm entirely detached from expectation. And yet, there are small, luminous moments. A shared joke no adult hears. A burst of laughter that surprises even you. A secret hiding place discovered behind stacked wood. These are real. They matter. But they are threaded through responsibility. As the years pass, and they do pass, even when days feel long, your games grow more precise. You throw stones farther. You run longer distances. You practice lifting heavier objects. Without noticing, you are training your future self, not because anyone sat you down and explained your destiny, but because the world around you requires strength, and so strength is practiced early. There are seasonal rhythms even in play. Harvest season leaves little time for it. Winter shortens it. Spring allows brief expansions. Summer stretches it thin between tasks. Time always is measured by need. One afternoon, perhaps, you sit alone for a moment. The others have gone inside. The air is cooling. You trace patterns in the dirt with a stick. For a brief stretch, you are not imitating anyone. You are simply present, but even then, the pattern you draw resembles rows in a field. Straight lines. Ordered. Prepared. Childhood in the medieval world does not lack imagination. It lacks separation. There is no wall dividing child's world from adult world. There is only gradation. A slow blending. You are still small, but you are already practicing becoming larger. And when the sun lowers and someone calls your name from the doorway, you rise without hesitation. Play ends. Tasks resume. The transition is smooth. Because it has always been this way. You brush dust from your knees. You step inside, and tomorrow when you play again, you will rehearse survival once more. You do not remember being told that you are no longer a small child. There is no ceremonial for it, no announcement, no moment when someone kneels and explains that play will thin out and usefulness will begin. It simply happens. One morning, instead of being shooed toward the edge of the field, you are handed something small and practical, a bundle of kindling, a wooden bowl, a switch to guide geese away from the garden beds. You are expected to understand. In medieval life, childhood does not stretch gently toward independence. It narrows into it. By 6 or 7 years old, sometimes earlier, you begin to contribute in ways that matter, and you feel that shift not as pride but as quiet pressure. The tasks given to you are rarely heavy. They are not traumatic. No one expects you to plow or reap with the strength of an adult. But your presence becomes necessary. You are sent to gather fallen twigs along the hedgerow. The wood must be dry. You learn to test it by feel. Damp branches bend. Dry ones snap cleanly. Your fingers grow sensitive to this difference. You squat for long stretches, scanning the ground. The cold seeps through your thin shoes. You move slowly so you do not miss what hides beneath leaves. No one hovers. You are trusted to finish. When you return, no one praises you. The bundle is taken. It is weighed in the hand. If it is good, it disappears into the growing stack by the door. If it is damp, you notice the pause, the look, the slight tightening around the mouth. You do not want to see that look again, and so the next day you choose better wood. That is how you learn. If your family keeps animals, you begin there as well. Chickens first. They are small, quick, nervous. You scatter grain from a small pouch tied at your waist. The birds rush forward, pecking in sharp bursts. You learn not to step too quickly among them. In colder months, your breath hangs pale in the air while you refill water basins. The surface freezes overnight. You break the thin ice with a stick, careful not to spill. The stick grows smooth from repeated use. You begin to wake earlier. No one forces you from sleep, but you understand that if you linger too long under rough wool blankets, someone else must do your task, and that feels heavier than cold air. Morning light in a medieval village is thin and uncertain. Smoke rises before the sun does. Roosters cry long before warmth arrives. You sit up while it is still gray. You rub sleep from your eyes with hands that are already roughening at the knuckles. The house smells faintly of ash and damp straw. You pull on the same garments you wore yesterday. They are stiff where mud dried. This is how work begins. Not suddenly, not loudly, but steadily, like a door that no longer closes behind you. There are other tasks. You carry water in small wooden pails. They are not large enough to strain your arms, but they are heavy enough to make you walk carefully. You learn balance before you learn letters. Each step must be placed with attention. The ground is uneven. Stones press through thin soles. If you spill, you must return for more, and so you slow down. Your pace becomes measured, deliberate. Sometimes you are sent to watch younger siblings, not to play with them, to watch, to prevent wandering, to keep them from the stream or the animal pens. You sit on an overturned bucket while they crawl in the dirt. You feel the stretch of responsibility in your chest. If something happens, it is your fault. No one says this, but you know. In harvest season, you follow the adults into fields. You are given a smaller task, collecting dropped stalks after reaping, bundling what was missed. The sun sits high and relentless. You bend again and again. You straighten slowly. Your back begins to ache in a way that surprises you. You are young. You did not think your body could feel tired in this way, but it can, and it does. The days lengthen. Work lengthens with them. You notice that adults rarely stop entirely. They pause, they drink, they wipe sweat from their brows. Then they continue. You begin to mirror this rhythm. Pause, continue, pause, continue. There is something hypnotic about it, a slow endurance. Sometimes you are trusted with errands beyond the immediate yard. You walk narrow paths between fields, carrying small items, a tool, a wrapped loaf, a message spoken quietly into your ear and repeated to yourself so you do not forget. You rehearse the words as you walk. You do not want to fail. You are aware, dimly, that mistakes cost more than embarrassment. A forgotten message can delay work. A dropped tool can mean wasted time. Time is not abundant. Even if you do not yet understand harvest cycles or winter stores, you understand that food does not appear without effort. And so you contribute. You begin to measure yourself not by how fast you can run, but by how reliably you can finish what is given to you. There is no childhood rebellion here. There is fatigue. There is quiet compliance. There is the slow shaping of you into someone necessary. You may still play sometimes. You may chase a hoop or toss a carved wooden ball when the day is light. But even play is edged with awareness. Soon someone will call your name, and you will go, because work has already found you, and it will not let go. There is no classroom for you. No slate board propped against a wall, no rows of benches. Your lessons arrive disguised as chores, and they repeat until your hands understand before your mind does. If you live in a village bound to open fields, your world stretches outward in long strips of cultivated earth. Narrow paths run between them, worn down by years of passing feet. You learn these paths by memory. At first you follow. Later you are sent ahead. You begin with small agricultural tasks that do not demand strength, only patience. Picking stones from turned soil, separating weeds from seedlings, carrying bundles of cut flax to be dried. The work is slow. You kneel for long periods. Your knees press into cool earth. Dampness seeps through rough cloth. Your fingers become accustomed to dirt packed under nails. You learn to distinguish plants by leaf shape, by stem thickness, by subtle color differences that at first seem invisible. The wrong plant pulled from the ground means less food later. The right plant removed means survival feels slightly more certain. No one explains it in those terms, but you begin to sense it. Repetition teaches you more than instruction ever could. You scatter seed in careful arcs, imitating the motion you have watched so many times. Your hand swings outward. The grains leave your palm in a thin fan. Some fall too close, some too far. You adjust. Again, again, again. You are not praised for improvement. You are corrected for error. And that is enough. In households where craft dominates, where a parent is a weaver, potter, or smith, you absorb technique by watching. You sit near the loom, listening to the wooden frame creak. The shuttle passes back and forth. Threads tighten in steady rhythm. You count the beats without knowing you are counting. The motion becomes predictable. Predictability becomes comfort. If you are near a forge, the air feels heavier, warm, metallic. You watch sparks leap upward and fade quickly in dim light. You are not yet allowed near the anvil, but you are given tasks that orbit it, pumping bellows slowly, steadily. Too fast, and the coals flare unevenly. Too slow, and the heat weakens. You learn balance not through words, but through watching flame color. The orange deepens. The iron glows. Time stretches. Your arms tire. You keep pumping. There is a quiet understanding in medieval life that skill is survival. A poorly woven cloth does not sell. A badly shaped pot cracks in firing. A dull blade fails at harvest. And so precision becomes your companion long before play leaves entirely. Even your body changes in response. Your shoulders round slightly from bending. Your palms thicken. Your pace slows. Not because you are lazy, but because speed creates mistakes. You begin to measure tasks not by how quickly they are done, but by whether they must be redone. And that changes how you move. In colder months, repetition continues indoors. You sit close to hearthlight, mending small tears in clothing. The needle pricks your finger more than once. You grow used to the sting. You thread again and again. You learn to knot tightly so seams do not unravel in damp weather. The fire cracks softly beside you. Outside, wind presses against wooden shutters. Inside, your world narrows to thread and fabric. You become still for long stretches. Stillness, too, is learned. There are no formal examinations, no certificates, but your family notices when tasks no longer require correction, when water arrives without spilling, when chickens are counted accurately, when bundles are tied securely, responsibility expands quietly. You are given slightly heavier loads, slightly longer walks, slightly sharper tools. You feel the weight difference immediately. The wood handle sits differently in your grip. The basket pulls at your shoulder with more insistence. Your breathing changes under strain. You adjust your stance. You learn to conserve movement. Work becomes rhythmic. Morning, midday, evening. The same tasks, altered only by season. Spring mud clings. Summer heat presses. Autumn winds dry your lips. Winter stiffens fingers. But the repetition remains. It is in repetition that medieval childhood reveals its truth. It was not chaotic. It was not constantly dangerous. It was steady, demanding in a way that did not flare but endured. You begin to understand time differently, not in days, but in cycles. The lambs born, the grain cut, the frost returning. Your tasks shift slightly with each cycle, but the underlying rhythm does not break, and within that rhythm, you grow. Not in dramatic leaps, but in small adjustments. Your body strengthens where needed, your patience lengthens, your tolerance for discomfort deepens. No one announces that you are becoming capable. You simply are. You notice it one afternoon when you complete a task, and no one checks your work. No one follows behind you to correct or redo. The absence of supervision feels heavier than presence ever did, because it means you are trusted, and trust in medieval life carries weight. You carry it quietly, just as you carry wood, just as you carry water, just as you carry the slow expectation that tomorrow will look much like today, and you will rise to meet it again. At some point you stop noticing where play ends and work begins. There is no sharp dividing line. The two fold into each other quietly. You might begin the morning chasing a hoop along a dirt path, the wooden ring wobbling over stones while you run behind it with a stick. Your breath fogs in the cool air. Your feet slap against packed earth. For a moment, there is nothing else. Then someone calls your name. The hoop tips and rolls into a ditch. You leave it there. By midday, you are scaring birds from the barley field, waving your arms in wide arcs. You shout. You clap. The birds rise in a sudden flutter, only to circle back when you grow tired. So you learn to pace your effort. A shout now. Silence. A thrown pebble later. Silence again. It feels almost like a game, until you realize that each pecked stalk is grain lost. And grain lost is bread thinned. You begin to understand that even the smallest task carries weight beyond itself. If you are a shepherd's child, your days may unfold along hillsides. You walk behind sheep with a crooked stick, tapping lightly at stragglers. The animals move slowly, heads down, chewing. There is time to wander in thought, time to watch clouds drag their shadows over fields, time to poke at insects in the grass. But always you count without speaking. One missing sheep means trouble. One lamb that does not rise again by morning changes the household's winter. The wind moves steadily across open land. It dries your lips. It tangles your hair. You learn to stand with your back slightly angled against it. Your body adapts to weather without complaint. In towns, childhood blends differently with labor. You might sweep the front of a small workshop, pushing dust into neat lines before the door opens for customers. You stand quietly in corners, observing exchanges of coin and goods. You learn numbers before you learn letters. You see how hands weigh silver pieces, how eyebrows lift when bargaining goes poorly. You do not participate, but you absorb. In some homes you turn a spit over the hearth while meat roasts slowly. The handle grows warm beneath your grip. Grease hisses and drips into flame. You shift your weight from foot to ease tired legs. There is a rhythm to it. Turn, pause, turn again. Smoke stings your eyes. You blink and continue. This is how hours pass. It is not heroic. It is not tragic. It is long. Sometimes you are given a moment that feels almost like freedom. sent to gather berries along hedgerows or collect fallen branches at the forest's edge. You move among trees where the air smells damp and green, light filters down in soft patterns. You might linger. You might crouch beside a stream and trail your fingers through water, so cold it numbs them. But you never forget why you were sent. Your basket must return full. If it does not, the walk was wasted. Even small pleasures are tethered to outcome. Winter compresses your world. Snow muffles sound. Paths disappear. You help bring animals into shelter earlier. You carry straw for bedding. The barn smells thick and warm compared to the frozen yard. Your breath hangs in pale clouds. Your fingers ache before they grow numb. Inside, evenings lengthen. You sit near the fire not for comfort alone, but to work by its light, carding wool, shelling dried peas, untangling twine. Your siblings sit beside you. There is little chatter, only the steady scrape of tools and crackle of embers. Childhood here is not loud, it is layered with quiet effort. You may laugh, you may nudge a brother or sister when an adult is not watching, but you know that laughter fades quickly if tasks remain unfinished. Sometimes you notice that your games mimic adult labor. You build small huts of sticks the way cottages are framed. You pretend to trade pebbles as coin. You divide imaginary fields. Even your imagination rehearses responsibility, because responsibility surrounds you. It is the air you breathe. There are rare feast days, of course, church festivals, weddings, moments when music drifts across the village square and bread is sliced more generously. On those days, you run more freely. You spin until dizziness forces you to stop. But even then you notice who watches the food tables, who tends the fire, who ensures nothing is wasted. And you understand that joy is permitted because someone maintains order beneath it. By the time you reach 10 or 11 years of age, the difference between you and the young adult is narrowing. Your hands are capable, your back is stronger, your endurance has deepened. You wake without complaint, you respond when called, you finish what is begun. There is no single day when someone declares you grown. Growth is measured in reliability, in how little correction you require, and how steadily you work even when bored, even when tired. And boredom comes often. Work repeats. Fields look the same. Animals move at the same pace. Seasons cycle predictably. The sameness can feel heavy. Yet within that sameness you find small variations. A different cloud shape, a slightly earlier frost, a tool that feels better balanced in your hand. You become attentive to nuance, because nuance is what breaks monotony. You might not think of yourself as resilient, but you are, resilient in the way stone walls are resilient, not because they move quickly, but because they endure weather year after year. By the time childhood fades fully into adolescence, you are already practiced in restraint, already practiced in patience, already practiced in carrying small burdens without ceremony. The medieval child does not experience a sudden loss of innocence. Innocence is worn thin gradually, not by cruelty, but by necessity, and necessity is steady. You breathe, you bend, you rise, you continue, just as you did yesterday, just as you will tomorrow. You grow up understanding that food is not guaranteed, not in winter, not in spring, not even in summer when fields look full. From the outside, a medieval village can appear abundant during harvest months. Grain bends in pale waves. Root vegetables swell beneath soil. Chickens scratch in yards and pigs grow heavy on scraps. But you learn early that what is visible in one season must stretch into the next. And stretching is rarely comfortable. As a child, you begin to notice portions, not because anyone explains scarcity to you directly, but because bowls are filled carefully. Ladles pause before dipping again. Bread is sliced thinly, even when loaves seem large. You sit at a wooden table scarred by years of use. Steam rises faintly from a pot of pottage thick with barley, onions, perhaps a scrap of salted meat if the season has been kind. You wait. No one begins until the eldest does. You lower your spoon slowly. You chew slowly, not because you are told to, but because eating too quickly means finishing too soon. And finishing too soon means noticing you are still hungry. Hunger in medieval childhood is rarely dramatic. It does not always arrive as sharp pain. More often it is a background presence, a hollow echo beneath the ribs, a lightness in the limbs by late afternoon, a slight irritability that you do not name. You work anyway. In lean years, when crops fail or weather turns cruel, hunger becomes more visible. Bread darkens as grain is mixed with ground peas or acorns. The taste changes. You notice? Adults pretend not to. Meals grow simpler. Silence at the table lengthens. You may go to sleep with the quiet awareness that tomorrow's bowl might hold less. But you do not panic, because panic wastes energy. Instead, you adapt. You chew more thoroughly. You drink water to fill the spaces between bites. You learn to be grateful for small things: a crust dipped in broth, a scrap of cheese shared among siblings. You begin to understand that survival depends not only on harvest, but on restraint. Cold arrives in similar fashion. Gradually, unavoidably, autumn carries a warning in its wind. Leaves thin. Air sharpens. You notice it first in your fingers when you rise before dawn. Your clothing does not change much. Perhaps an extra layer of wool, patched and repatched. But wool can only do so much. In winter, the inside of your cottage is not warm in the way modern comfort defines warmth. The hearth burns when there is fuel. When wood runs low, flames shrink. You huddle closer. Smoke curls upward and sometimes downward when wind presses against the chimney. Your eyes sting. Your nose runs. You wipe it on your sleeve without thought. At night you share warmth. Bodies close together beneath rough blankets. Breath mingling in cold air. You wake sometimes because your toes have gone numb. You pull them closer to your chest. You wait for feeling to return. Morning comes, slowly in winter. Gray light seeps through shutters long before any real warmth follows. You sit up reluctantly. The air bites. You dress quickly, hands fumbling with stiff fabric. There are still animals to feed, water to fetch. Cold does not excuse responsibility. Snow complicates tasks. Paths vanish beneath white drifts. You step carefully, testing depth. Ice forms in thin, deceptive sheets over puddles. You fall sometimes. You rise again. Your cheeks burn from wind. Your ears ache. You continue. There is no alternative. Occasionally sickness moves quietly through households during harsh winters. A cough lingers longer than it should. Someone stays in bed past sunrise. You are told to be quiet, to carry water gently, to let them rest. Sometimes they recover. Sometimes they do not wake again. Death in medieval childhood is not hidden, but it is not spoken of with flourish either. It arrives quietly. It is acknowledged. Life resumes because it must. As a child, you absorb this without fully understanding. You sense the fragility of bodies, the unpredictability of seasons. But you also sense resilience, because despite hunger, despite cold, work continues. Spring always returns, not dramatically, but steadily. The first green shoots push through thawing soil. Animals give birth. Milk flows more freely. You taste freshness again, and with it relief. Relief in medieval life is rarely loud. It is subtle. It is the feeling of a bowl slightly fuller than yesterday's. The feeling of sun warming your shoulders after months of gray. You begin to mark time not by calendar, but by sensation. The tightening of hunger in late winter, the loosening of it in early summer, the bite of frost, the softness of thaw. This awareness shapes you. You grow cautious with food, careful with firewood, attentive to weather signs. You look at clouds differently than a child raised in certainty would. You measure the sky. You measure the ground. You measure your own endurance, because endurance more than abundance defines medieval childhood. You learn to exist within limits, to work even when your stomach is not entirely satisfied, to rise even when warmth feels far away. And within those limits you find a quiet strength. Not loud, not heroic, but steady. You are learning without knowing it, how to live in a world where comfort is temporary, and survival depends on patience. The hunger you feel is not sudden. It creeps along the edges of your body, a constant hum beneath the day's work. You notice it more sharply in mid-morning, after chores are half finished. Your stomach rumbles softly. You tell yourself it is normal. You sip water. You nibble a scrap of bread. You return to the animals, to the field, to sweeping floors carrying wood, turning the small wheels of daily labor. The work is repetitive, endless, and yet it is comforting in its own way. You measure your day not by clocks or bells. You measure it by hunger, by cold, by the slow progress of tasks. Morning stretches into afternoon. The fire smolders. Smoke drifts lazily into the rafters. The hearth provides warmth, but only in its immediate vicinity. Your fingers extended toward the coals grow numb quickly, retreating to the folds of your tunic. Outside, frost clings to the edges of every surface. You notice the sharp bite in your toes, the ache in your shoulders, the stiffness in your knees. Even the smallest tasks demand attention. Water must be carried, food prepared, animals fed. You bend over each core with care. Every dropped grain, every spilled scoop, every mistake is measured. Not in anger, but in necessity. Tasks undone ripple outward. Others must compensate. Your work, small as it seems, matters. By evening the quiet pressure grows. The shadows lengthen. The chill sets deeper in your bones. Your stomach protests more insistently. You notice every empty space in your cupboard, every thin slice of bread, every scant spoon of pottage. Dinner arrives slowly. The portions are measured, sometimes smaller than yesterday. The taste is thin. Your body remembers. It does not forget the hunger. You sit quietly, chewing deliberately, stretching each bite into a pause between labor and sleep. Evenings are long. The fire dims as fuel dwindles. Embers glow faintly. You sit close. You huddle, sharing warmth with siblings or cousins. Your body learns to tolerate cold. Your mind learns to tolerate hunger. Sleep comes slowly at first, not because your body resists, but because the world's demands echo in your mind. You dream lightly of food, of warmth, of spring, and still morning will arrive, cold and necessary. You awaken. You dress. You fetch water. You feed animals. You carry small burdens, again and again. Hunger is a slow teacher. Cold is another. Through these subtle pressures you learn endurance. You learn to measure effort, to ration energy, to wait, to observe, to anticipate. The quiet fear of insufficient food, of the winter's cold, teaches lessons no adult voice could deliver. You sense the fragility of life and the weight of responsibility, but you also sense the slow accumulation of capability. By doing, by enduring, by surviving, you grow quietly stronger. Your small hands become deft, your steps careful, your mind patient. Even your imagination shapes itself around endurance. Play persists, but it is tempered. You imitate labor in your games. You rehearse survival with sticks and stones. You practice skill in ways both real and pretend. And when night falls, and the hearth dims, and the wind rattles shutters, you understand something subtle, but crucial. Comfort is temporary. Survival is constant. And your body and mind must learn to endure it. By now, you are attuned to the subtle rhythms of danger. Not the kind that arrives with swords or shouting, but the kind that drifts slowly through the air. A bitter wind carrying frost that bites without pause. A thin loaf of bread that must stretch across more mouths than it was intended to feed. A cough that lingers quietly through the night. The world teaches you caution in soft increments. You notice the smallest details. A patch of ice along the path, a suspicious weight in a basket, a child left too long unattended near the stream. You adjust, you adapt. And through this adaptation, You build resilience. The medieval child learns survival not by dramatic trials, but by persistent minor threats. The cold, the hunger, the small injuries all accumulate into lessons. A scraped knee from chasing a hoop across frozen ground teaches caution. A missed task, a spilled bucket, a scalded finger all teach measured effort. You learn to balance speed and care, to anticipate consequences quietly, to watch, wait, and act. Even your imagination mirrors this reality. Games become practice. Imitating adult labor is no longer just play. You pretend to carry water in small pails. You drag sticks along the dirt as if plowing. You check imaginary flocks of sheep. You count invisible coins. You measure effort, time, and consequence. Every movement, every thought, becomes a rehearsal for endurance. The body grows in response. Muscles firm where repetition presses. Hands roughen where petition presses. Hands roughen where tools are held. Feet harden where cold ground meets bare soles. You develop patience without knowing it, not the patient kind that waits for entertainment, the patient kind that observes, calculates, and continues despite discomfort. Even fear is disciplined. You know that illness may strike. You have seen adults and children alike fall sick quietly, fading from daily work. You have noticed the absence, the hushed whispers, the unchanged pace of chores despite that absence. Death is present, but it is not loud. It is the quiet missing, and so you learn to value life subtly, without ceremony, without celebration. Each day completed is an achievement. Each task finished is a small victory. Each night survived beneath frost and hunger is a quiet triumph, even when the body aches, even when fingers tremble from cold, even when the stomach reminds you of its emptiness. You adapt, you endure, you grow stronger in ways unseen. By observing, imitating, and repeating, you gain knowledge not written in books, not spoken aloud. It is written in muscle memory, in rhythm, in attention to subtle signs. You become capable of noticing the smallest shifts in your environment, the way clouds gather before a storm, the angle of frost on the roof, the behavior of livestock that hints at illness, the quiet groan of a neighbor's door hinges that warns of fatigue or trouble. All these things shape your awareness, and as you grow, you carry this awareness with you. Through repetition, observation, and careful imitation, the medieval child becomes both resilient and cautious, not because anyone taught you explicitly, but because life itself required it. Your survival depends on small attentions, on steady endurance. You learn to accept discomfort without complaint, to observe without panic, to act without hesitation when required. Even small pleasures are tempered by awareness, a fleeting laugh, a shared warmth by the fire, a brief moment of play. All are appreciated more deeply because they are not guaranteed. By the end of childhood you have learned comfort is temporary, survival is constant, and resilience is built quietly through repetition, attention, and endurance. You carry it in your hands, your back, your mind, and even in moments of seeming stillness, you continue to practice survival without thought, without ceremony. This is the world of the medieval child. It is calm, it is quiet, it is unrelenting, and within it you find strength you would never recognize in the modern world. By now your days are structured around necessity, and your movements are measured by experience. But medieval childhood does not end with the domestic or the farm. It extends outward toward the wider world of village, market, and neighboring fields. Even if you have never traveled far, your senses begin to map this environment. You learn first by watching. You observe adults moving through spaces you barely understand. A blacksmith bends over the anvil. Sparks leap from glowing metal. The rhythm is steady, unhurried, precise. A baker lifts dough into a wood-fired oven. The smell of smoke and rising bread clings to the air. A weaver threads shuttle after shuttle, the tension in the loom constant, the pattern emerging gradually. Your eyes track motions, your mind records them silently. Later, small hands imitate them, not in play alone, but in preparation for work. You learn the shape of tools, the weight of baskets, the feel of handles in your fingers. Observation precedes action, and action requires care. One wrong step could spill water, drop grain, or startle animals. You notice subtleties in movement, how the body leans slightly forward when lifting, how fingers curve to hold fragile implements, how eyes flick to measure distance or weight before hands act. Even the rhythm of a task matters. Too fast, and error occurs. Too slow, and inefficiency sets in. You begin to internalize the pace of survival. Your mind learns to anticipate. You see the way wind bends reeds at the edge of a pond, and predict where a basket might snag. You watch the clouds and read the signs of rain before it falls. You learn to adjust your plans quietly. Every lesson arrives through observation and repetition. You learn more from doing than from explanation. Sometimes a task is given without a demonstration. Perhaps a small cart must be wheeled across uneven ground. You pause. You lift. You balance. You adjust. You continue. By the time you succeed, you understand not only what must be done, but how it feels in your body. This embodied understanding is crucial, because the wider world beyond the household or the immediate farm demands it. A medieval child must navigate the village safely. Stone paths are uneven. Loose cobbles threaten a twisted ankle. Streams must be forded carefully, especially after rain. Animals in yards or pastures can be unpredictable. Even neighbors may carry subtle expectations that must be met. You observe patterns. You memorize routines. You anticipate reactions. And through this you build a quiet competence. You do not boast. You do not rush. You act because necessity demands it, and because repetition has taught you how. Even the smallest errors can teach more than praise ever could. A dropped bundle of sticks teaches balance. A spilled bucket teaches care. A miscounted coin teaches attention. All lessons accumulate. By the time adolescence approaches, you have mastered early survival skills without realizing you are doing so. Observation first, action second, and always awareness. The medieval child grows capable quietly, gradually, and without ceremony, by learning to see before doing, to measure before lifting, to anticipate before acting. You are prepared for a world that rewards patience, diligence, and subtle understanding. And though these skills may seem small now, they will shape every movement in the years to come. Observation alone is not enough. Eventually your hands are required to follow what your eyes have memorized. The apprenticeship begins. Perhaps you are assigned to a parent or a craftsman in the village. Your first tasks are small: a scrap of cloth to fold, a spoon to carve, a basket to carry. You repeat these actions slowly, deliberately. At first your movements are awkward, your fingers fumble, your back stiffens. You pause too often, unsure if the action is correct, and sometimes it is not. But correction is quiet, a hand guiding yours, a nod of approval, a demonstration repeated. No one shouts, no one punishes. You are guided softly, yet the expectation is clear. Precision matters. Through repetition your body learns. You begin to sense weight and balance without thinking. The grain of wood, the resistance of thread, the pliancy of clay. All become familiar. The mind works alongside the body. You recall sequences observed earlier. You adjust movements based on memory. You notice subtle shifts, a loom that tightens differently today than yesterday, a pot that dries faster in the sun. Each small observation informs the next action. Patience grows naturally. Errors are noticed, but they do not shame you. They instruct you. Your skill is measured by reliability, not speed. A medieval apprenticeship is never about immediate brilliance. It is about endurance, consistency, quiet diligence. Some tasks seem endless. You stir broth for what feels like hours. You knead dough until your wrists ache. You polish tools until your fingers are raw. And yet through this monotony your muscles strengthen. Your endurance deepens. Your attention sharpens. Even when boredom weighs heavily, you persist. Because the outcome matters. Because survival, not recognition, is the ultimate reward. Your mind grows alongside your body. You learn cause and effect in real terms. The straw too loosely bundled allows chickens to scatter. A poorly tied knot in a rope risks spilling water. An overheated fire can scorch a pot. You see the consequences unfold gently but unmistakably, and you adjust. There is also quiet competition, not rivalry, but observation of skill in others. Older children or peers show you a technique slightly different. You watch. You imitate. You test the method. You adopt what works. There is humility in learning this way. You are not praised excessively. You are not scolded harshly. You are measured by results, small and consistent. This combination of observation, repetition, and measured action is the foundation of survival. The medieval child becomes capable in both hands and mind, slowly, without ceremony, without spectacle. You learn to endure tedium, to sense change, to act with precision. Even your imagination mirrors this learning. Games mimic craft, play rehearses labor, imitation becomes practice, and as you complete tasks successfully, you begin to sense an inner rhythm, the rhythm of effort and patience, of observation and action, of the slow accumulation of skill. By the time you reach adolescence, you carry not just knowledge of tasks, but the quiet understanding of endurance, of consequence, of steady attention. You are no longer merely a child. You are a practitioner of survival, a learner of the world's rhythms. And though no one will announce it, you are prepared to navigate the wider village, to assist adults, to anticipate needs, to act with care when circumstances demand it, prepared in ways that only years of small, repeated action can teach. By this stage, your apprenticeship is more than just practice. It is preparation for responsibility beyond the home. You begin to understand that the world is larger than your immediate tasks, and that your actions ripple outward. Perhaps you are asked to deliver a message to a neighboring farm, or to assist a merchant in the village square. The journey is short, but it is charged with lessons. Paths are uneven. Stones protrude. Mud slicks after rain. You carry your burden carefully, aware of every step. Every movement must anticipate consequences. If you stumble, the basket may spill. If you pause too long, the message may be delayed. If you miscount a coin, trust falters. Responsibility manifests quietly, not dramatically. You feel it in your shoulders as the weight shifts. You feel it in your hands as they grip tightly. You feel it in your mind as it scans for obstacles, for patterns, for signs of risk. In the marketplace, you observe adults exchanging goods. You notice their gestures, the subtle nods of approval, the slight frowns of dissatisfaction. You learn to respond appropriately, not with words first, but with awareness. You notice when baskets are stacked too high, when a cart wobbles dangerously, when a child teeters too close to the animals. You adjust. You intervene quietly. You act before mistakes happen. And with each successful act, your confidence grows not in a loud or boastful way, but in a measured, quiet manner. This is how medieval childhood bridges into adolescence. You become a participant in the household's survival, not merely an observer. Your decisions, small as they seem, carry weight. You begin to understand the interconnectedness of tasks. A loaf baked correctly feeds not just you, but siblings, neighbors, and sometimes the village. Water fetched carefully ensures chores continue uninterrupted. Tools maintained properly prevent labor from faltering. You also learn humility. Mistakes are observed, corrected gently, but remembered. The world does not rush to forgive. Errors cost time, effort, or resources. And so you learn foresight. You anticipate needs before being told. You notice the approach of storm clouds and prepare the animal shelter. You detect a weak fence post and reinforce it before it collapses. You notice the smallest details that others may overlook, and you act quietly to maintain order. This quiet responsibility shapes your character. It teaches restraint, observation, and measured effort. It instills endurance and patience. It ensures that, when adolescence arrives, You are prepared to take on larger roles. The medieval child is never left unprepared for the demands of survival. The lessons are slow. They accumulate in silence, through observation, repetition, and small, continuous responsibility. By the time adulthood approaches, you have learned to act without guidance, to notice without instruction, and to carry burdens both literal and figurative. You have learned that life unfolds not in dramatic leaps but in steady persistence, and that is the essence of survival in the medieval world. The world beyond your home is vast, demanding and quiet, and you, through patience and careful observation, are ready to meet it. Now, you sit back, or perhaps lie quietly as the day's rhythm fades in your mind. You have walked slowly through the world of medieval childhood. You have felt the subtle pressures of hunger, cold, and persistent responsibility. You have moved through long hours of repetition, observation, and small lessons that, over time, shaped body and mind. And now, in this quiet moment, there is a gentle contrast with the modern world around you. Perhaps you hear a faint hum from a distant street. Perhaps the air is warm, the light steady, the cupboards full. You notice it without urgency. You notice how distant it feels from the reality you have imagined, and you realize comfort is present in ways the medieval child could scarcely imagine. Yet, even with abundance, there is value in remembering restraint, in noticing effort, in understanding endurance. You can feel the slow accumulation of skills and patience, quietly embedded in your body and memory. Even as you relax now, a faint echo of those lessons remains. The weight of responsibility, the rhythm of labor, the careful measurement of every action they have shaped a subtle awareness within you. And though the medieval world is distant, its quiet lessons persist. Observe carefully, act deliberately, endure patiently, value small triumphs, appreciate fleeting comforts. You may drift further into sleep now, or simply linger in thought. Either way, the narrative has slowed to its natural pace. The world you imagined fades gently, leaving traces of resilience, quiet attentiveness, and the slow, steady passage of time. The night stretches long and calm. You exhale. You release tension in small increments. Your body softens. Your mind follows. And in this release there is a subtle, unspoken completion, not a conclusion, but a gentle letting go. The medieval child's world is distant, yet its rhythm can echo softly within you. You carry it not as drama, but as awareness, not as excitement, but as calm understanding. And now, in this quiet, you may finally allow yourself to rest fully, knowing that the lessons of endurance, patience, and subtle observation can settle alongside you, softening into the night. The fire burns low, the wind moves outside softly, and in this gentle space the story concludes, not with fanfare, but with the calm release of a day fully observed, fully endured, and quietly remembered. Sleep can come now, slowly, peacefully, as it always should.